Welcome again, everybody, to another one of my podcasts. And if you're watching on YouTube, hello. I am every single time I say this, delighted, but I am delighted to have the wonderful Devon Banks on today. Hello, Devon. How are you?
I'm great, thanks.
Good stuff. So Devon is with, I'm probably going to get this wrong, Devon, Huss Alerts. And she describes herself on LinkedIn as, her title on LinkedIn, I should say, is Women in Tech Sales, 2x LinkedIn Sales Star, she, her in terms of pronouns. So I know Devon through Justin Michael's insane Salesborg chats, and some of the conversations that we've been having offline within that group, I think, are raising some interesting debate, shall we say, in the world of sales, just more broadly. And we'll see where we go with that today. However, I just wanted to get Devon on because she has pivoted her career a number of times. I want to talk about how she's managed to get 2x LinkedIn Sales Star, because that is awesome. And then just get her insights, dare I say it, from women in tech sales. So as everyone listening, this kind of goes all over the place. Devon, enough about me. Introduce yourself: who, what, why, when, where.
All right, so I am Devon Banks. I'm based out of Toronto, Canada. I, like I said, I work for a company called Huss Alert. What we are trying to do is make the roads safer for everybody through connected vehicles. I have been there since February 1st. I am the first official SDR at Huss Alert, so it's very exciting. Growing tech company based out of Chicago. I actually come from, this is, like you said, my third career pivot. Previous to this, I was working for Canada's largest chicken wing restaurant as their general manager of training and development, which was an amazing job. I basically ate chicken wings every day.
I love chicken wings.
Yeah. I worked with an amazing team over there, building out their training and development program for new and existing franchisees. And before that, I was teaching English in Taiwan for 9 years. And before that, I worked my way through university in hospitality. So, started as a host and then server, bartender, supervisor. So I've been had a few different careers.
That's a pretty awesome career. Now, if I reflect on my career 20 years ago, showing my age now, in the world of recruitment, I know we were talking about this beforehand. I used to recruit sales professionals into the IT and tech sector in London, and then the M4 corridor, Thames Valley, for those that know. And historically, if someone like you, your CV would have come through, male or female, kind of irrelevant, I'd have gone, yeah, that's not going to fit the model of terms of what a traditional salesperson, back then BDRs, SDR didn't even exist as a model. It was net new business or account management. But I think it's really interesting, I guess, from what's happened in the last 12 months. And even before this, you started to see people from, how can I put this, non-traditional background from a sales perspective, those that are listening, I'm doing inverted commas. So how has that journey been for you, and how have you drawn on, dare I say it, some far more sophisticated experience than I could ever dream to have? Firstly, teaching English in Taiwan, and then working for Canada's biggest chicken wing shop in certain brand in terms of doing all that. So let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like, if we even go back further, I've always been someone who's been in like a customer service and sales role or adjacent. My very, very first job when I was 12 or 13 was washing hair at our local hair salon on Saturdays. So like washing, sweeping, taking out curlers, things like that. And again, that role was, and I hate this phrase, I think it's cliche, but relationship building. Every week we had a lot of the same weekly, monthly, or every couple months, it was the same people coming in. And it was about creating an experience for them, because again, there's thousands of hair salons that people can go to. Why come to this one? And, as we know, it's not just about price. There's so much
about
more.
price. Unless your price is so far out, it is never about price. Oh, close second on price.
Right, because I've gotten great haircuts. Just last August, the last time I got a haircut was like $26, and I loved it. And I've gotten $200 haircuts that I've came home and cried myself to sleep. So, I learned really early the value of experience and of, listening, talking, and just creating that relationship with your clients where they are comfortable and happy to come back. So I took that, hairdressing experience that went into my next job, which was a cashier at a gas station. When you're in high school, you do what you can.
You do, right? Yeah, exactly.
But again, it's another job where you see a lot of the same faces. Even think of yourself. You probably go to the same petrol or gas station all of the time. And before we didn't have pay at the pump. Mm-hmm. You had to go in.
Yeah.
And so again, you're creating these things of these relationships. You can look at people's cards and see their names, like, oh, hey, Mr. Lowe, how was your week? Things like that. You're not making tips, but again, you're creating that experience. Yeah. And then that moves, of course, into hospitality. And this is where I think to continue the story, it ends up into sales, where, every interaction is a chance to create an experience for your customer or your client. So yeah, I think that's how it all ties together for me.
And the hospitality industry can be brutal because, you go in there as a client, so to speak, and you expect a certain kind of level of experience. And the challenge is that each person probably has a different expectation of what that experience should be. And as a waiter or a waitress or a busboy or front office, whatever it is, you kind of have to read the room and read the individual. And sometimes people take that to the extreme and they're just douchebags about life, but you still have to, manage that and deal with that. And in terms of my entire role in sales, even when I was starting out life from a cold calling perspective, and you got that 30 seconds to kind of build rapport and relationship, I look back at my most successful deals have been where actually there is a relationship built over time, but each one has been slightly nuanced and slightly different. So I know the answer to this question, but why move from the role that you are in now to something that is, the first BDR within Haas Alert, very, very different, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think what happened to me was that my time in the chicken wing chain ended, and it was, I was looking at my career and my goals at that time. I'm a single parent. At that time, my daughter was, I believe, she was still 2 years old. Now she's 4. And I'm going like, okay, I need, I know that I need something that's challenging and constantly, I need that. I know that I need that. So I'm like, where can I find a challenge? Where can I find something that's not stagnant? But where can I find a job and an opportunity where there is no ceiling for how much money I can make, where I can build a life for my daughter and I, where, we can go on trips to Disney World if we want to, or we can go on trips to the Grand Canyon, or we can go camping, where I don't have to worry about having the money to send her to university or even to, doing just the extracurricular activities she wants to do now. So I started looking into those industries, and of course, tech and banking were the two that first, and I'm also in Toronto, right? So I'm in a huge tech and banking, financial center of the world.
Yeah.
And so that's where I settled on tech. And then it just kind of, I
think what's really refreshing is to hear you actually say that. And I'm not a single parent, but as a parent, you kind of, the script flips somewhat in terms of what your purpose is in life. You become not providing for yourself, you're providing for someone else, and you will go to the ends of earth for them. But also, my entire career in sales has been driven by money. I've been very fortunate. I've been brought up to a lifestyle which is very nice, courtesy of my late father and my mother in terms of what they did and achieved for me and my brother. So I want to be able to maintain those experiences. To your point, if I choose to. Doesn't necessarily mean I will to, but I do sometimes think that people are afraid to admit themselves. They're in it for the money, and they're in it to make money, to better themselves, but better your lot, or provide something in terms of what's what. So that's refreshing to hear somebody admit that. Thank you, because I'm cut from the same cloth. So what did you find was the hardest kind of switch from the world that you were in terms of chicken wings through to moving into tech sales, because I've just made this move into tech sales myself, having just joined a SaaS company, and already seeing the differences, the nuances that brings with it. But I'd welcome your insight, and certainly that balance as a single parent, especially over the last 12 months of chaos we've had to endure.
I think so. There's a few challenges. I mean, and of course, the whole pandemic world brings these other challenges. However, working from home for me as a single parent has really been, a blessing, because it gives me back all of this time with my daughter that I didn't have before because I was commuting.
Yeah.
And even we were just talking about this before, I used to spend an hour getting ready in the morning and trying to balance getting her fed and dressed while I'm trying to do that. And now, I can just really focus on being present with her, and also when she comes home. Yeah. Now to go into the things, I can't really work past 5. She comes in, and if I say, hey, V, do you mind if I make a few more calls? And she says, no.
Peppa Pig, or whatever the equivalent is in Canada.
Yeah, like there's no, sometimes I can say, okay, just let mommy make, 4 or 5 more calls. And I get it, because we're apart all day. So and then she goes to bed at 7. So that time between 5 and 7 is kind of sacred. Mm-hmm. So that's been one of the good things. Mm-hmm. I think one of the bigger challenges of coming from that world to this world is, when I was the general manager of training and development at Wild Wing, I was doing a lot of different things every day. I was doing a lot of writing, doing in-person trainings, which I love. I really do miss that. For me, I'm the kind of person that they're like, oh, here's the stage. And I'm like, how do I get on there? There's 2,000 people to talk to, like I'm in. So that part was never a challenge for me. I loved doing that. I didn't miss that. I think for me, the biggest challenge coming into a role like a BDR, coming from a role like that, is it's really tough to make cold calls all day. Yeah. And it's not the picking up the phone, and it's not the rejection. I mean, that stuff is hard. It's doing one thing over and over and over again, which I'm still catching myself, getting distracted and maybe not being as efficient as I want to be, because I still, like I said, I like the idea of doing lots of different things. And even though we do that in a BDR role, we need these intense focus of, an hour call block or 2-hour call block, and then not just once a day, twice a day, and then 5 days a week. I do find that challenging, but again, talking to people and then having those great conversations is what makes my day. So it's sort of like a double-edged sword, because to do the things I love, I got to do, and I don't want to say I hate, because I actually don't hate cold calling at all, but you have to balance it out. So that's been challenging for me. And if there's any consolation,
20 years ago when I was, doing the cold calling in my recruitment days, and we didn't have, technology such as, I don't know if you use, Jerry Hills in our group, Connect and Sell, or the equivalent kind of voice platforms to kind of help you on that. It was literally just, smile and dial. I used to have my shirts used to wear out on the elbow as you were doing this, and it was tough. But then with less distraction, we didn't have social media, we didn't have kind of all of the other kind of things that are going on around there. So with regards to kind of that, and how have you found it doing that in, you talked about the positives of seeing more of your daughter. I have the same. I'm not flying around the world anymore like I was, although I do miss kind of a bit of peace and quiet sitting in an airplane. I'm not going to lie. How have you found building a community either with your other team, or building that kind of to keep you going? Because that was the one thing but what I did enjoy was the sales floor, and that helped kind of motivate and kind of keep each other going. So how have you as a business or found other communities to help kind of maintain that rhythm, if you will, or kind of pick me up when you're having a moment going, oh, I just can't do this anymore?
I mean, in my previous role, I was on a team of BDRs. At one point, there were 8 of us, and a few of us would get together on a Zoom. Mm-hmm. All mute each other, and I used Connect and Sell a little bit in that role, but we, smiling and dialing. Well, one of us got someone on the phone, which didn't happen much in my previous role. It was like unmute, we could all listen and, be excited for each other. So that was one way we did it. But then, of course, too, when the call is done, we would chat about it. And then sometimes that would turn into getting to know each other better, which was important.
Yeah.
And then, in this role now, I am the only BDR, but we do have Slack. And, we have some channels in our Slack that are fun, like random and general. We have a creature feature. We have a Gordon Ramsay channel for all of our cooking. My new role, some of these people have worked together for a long time. So there's it's very small organization. So they know each other well, but the culture is really nice. Like we had a poker night the other day, which was great. We were all playing together just for fun. And, everybody came in with their glasses on and their hoodies on. So building that I found it's actually been, it's different. When I was with Wild Wing, I worked really closely I was also a very small company, and I really worked closely with two other people. And, that was like, I had like my work husband, basically, and then my work wife. The three of us were all together. And I do miss that. But I think that those things can be recreated. And it's about just finding that balance of, I think you have to be more honest in this role. Like in an office, you can sit there. People think that we're not as productive at home, but there's definitely a lot of times in an office I was sitting there doing this and not doing anything at all.
A 2-minute chat around the water cooler becomes 15 minutes later if you just, shooting the breeze. Oh, probably should get back on the phone or do what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, whereas here, I think you just have to be honest. Like one day, a couple of weeks ago, we have an AE channel in our Slack, and I just messaged them, and I was like, "Help! Like I'm so unproductive today."
Happens to all of us, especially just in this kind of screen time is what's what. I'm desperate to get back into some kind of face-to-face environment. Touch. Not in that sense, but actually physically, be in a room and build a relationship with people, or even just out in the park or on the walk and talk meetings. We touched on this before we came on air. I mean, it sounds much grander than it is, but the pandemic has impacted a hell of a lot of people, especially in the hospitality industry around the world. See it in the UK; it's been decimated. I'm sure it's the same in in Canada and the countries that all countries have been really affected by this. And you feel that a lot of people are probably going to, if not, are going to maybe have to follow your footsteps, if that's the right turn of phrase, that move from a hospitality gig into something completely different. So what would your advice be for them if they're kind of sitting there listening to this going, I've just been made redundant, or it's not looking good in terms of X, Y, Z. What the hell do I do with the skill set that I have?
It's very daunting, I think, because a lot of people who are in hospitality for a long time, they're really passionate about it. I have friends who have been in hospital. It was their first job. And, 20 years later, they're doing it because they truly love it. So I think, it's a process because and they didn't have a chance to really grieve. They went from having a successful job that they loved, making money, to nothing overnight. So I think, it's been hard and I've seen people go through, on social media, some of my friends on Facebook, I saw the year of them posting and then going back to work and then getting locked down again. I don't know if we are, today is, we're the beginning of April. We're actually on another lockdown here. This is April 2021 now. So we've been on lockdown in Toronto for basically 13 months.
Yeah.
So I think my advice to them would be, exploring something new. It doesn't have to be permanent. It can just be, you don't have to give up being in hospitality. I think that, we have to look at those hospitality skills that we have and how they actually relate and are very relevant to tech sales. One of my best friends, she's right now a manager here, and I'm trying to help her make that transition. And we're going through, and I said, look at all these skills that you have. You are an experience maker. You are so organized. You can deal with multiple different personalities. And you touched on that earlier, multiple different personalities and needs and wants all simultaneously. And, I wanted to touch on that point you said is not only in hospitality are you dealing with all these different personalities and these people with all these different expectations, the same person can have different expectations every single time they come in. And you would see that when we would have these regular customers, come in with their friends to watch the game. And then the next day or a couple of days later, come in with their wife and their kids. And then, come in on a business lunch. So you really have to also adjust and understand what people need and want in that moment. And really successful hospitality people can do that. So I think, it's about telling your story. And one thing is, I think LinkedIn is a really powerful way for hospitality people to do that, because they can use their own words to showcase and highlight their skills and say, hey, look at all these amazing things that I can do and that I've done. And look how they're parallel and relevant in tech sales. So I think it's really just sitting down and realizing that you have this incredible skill set that can make you super successful, because hospitality people are already in sales.
Indeed. And the sales is, it's interesting you talking about the experience, because I'm now starting to see this narrative come through around the overall experience economy. And as we come through the other side of this, and whatever the other side looks like, the expectation is now at a certain level that whenever a customer or future customer touches an organization, whether it's tech sales, fintech, banking, doesn't really matter, whether it's physical in this sense or back to actual physical in terms of meetings, through to the website, through to the content you read, the organizations that start to figure this out and figure out what is the best overall end-to-end experience that we're providing, and that when we actually engage with our customers or future customers, that we are maintaining that level of experience, those organizations will start to win and start to win big, because every time they come back and talk, Devon is setting the standard of what the experience should be of receiving a cold call. So once they get to know you, yes, I'm going to take Devon's call again, versus somebody who's not creating the experience that Devon can. Oh, that was really, I'm not. But again, it could be, to your point of the different, they're coming in with on their own family, business, etc. Within sales, every single day, everyone's dealing with different stuff, especially if you're stuck at home and your children aren't doing what you want them to do in the morning, or the bath time for us is always just a freaking nightmare. So it's just always that time of night. It's just, please, just once do what I want you to do. It's sales is really hard. It is really, really, really hard. And in terms of, sales is hard, and I know we touched on this earlier, and go as far as this with as much as you want to. But how have you found it as being a woman in sales? Because yes, women, there is the women men thing in hospitality, from waitresses to waiters to busboys and so on, and we can go there if we want to, but I think we need to. But also, women in sales, and it's a very patriarchal environment. And I'm just seeing some interesting conversations just that are starting to bubble up and need to be had. And I'm, the father of a son and a daughter. I'm married to a successful woman who is driving her career through a very patriarchal dominated environment. And that's as much just the nature of the generation has to retire to allow that pipeline of next talent to come through. But, as a 2x LinkedIn sales star, you're obviously doing something right. But let's just touch on this a little.
Yeah, I think, it's hard for me to talk about, and we mentioned this because I think that, well, first of all, there are so many, even within, if you want to talk about women, we have so many different experiences as women, and so many different layers. And, we have these, it's called, intersectionality, which is where, as a woman, and then if you're a Black woman, that's a whole other experience. And if you have disabilities, or if you're a woman with disability, or, all of these different things come together to create all these different experiences. So first, I think that needs to be recognized, that there isn't just like men in sales and then women in sales. There's all of these different layers. And I think where we're going to start to see it is that the idea of this sort of, and I think that's why the title of your podcast is very interesting, as Death of a Salesman. I think that's what we're going to see, is this death of the idea of what is a salesman and a salesperson. Because as we start bringing in the diversity and the dimensionality, we're going to see that, everyone talks about these skills that you need to be successful in scales. Well, is that really, are those the skills that you need, or that's just the skills they've worked in this world that's been more one-dimensional? As we start moving in and we have, all of these different roles and people moving into decision maker roles, how is that going to change how they would like to be sold to?
Yeah.
So it's like, we really have to go down way back to basics and see, are these even good sales skills, or this is just kind of what's worked and what's been the status quo? I think the one example I can think of off the top of my head is this introvert versus extrovert.
Yeah.
And I think even till recently, people would say you have to be an extrovert to be successful in sales, but I don't think that's true at all.
Right.
And I have friends who are introverted. It again, it's just another dimension to their personality. It doesn't mean they're good or bad at anything.
You've hit the net. You've articulated that really, really well. The skills bit, I think, is just general across sales, full stop. I don't believe that there are the requisite skills today to meet the buyer of tomorrow, and that's a big challenge for leadership, full stop, to accept that. Also, I was not trained, but I did a Myers-Briggs as one of the, you're either an E or you're an I. And it wasn't this is for a law firm when I worked at, and it wasn't to say you're better at one or the other. It's lawyers typically are on the I rather than the E. There are some very, very successful lawyers who are very good salespeople, but they're introverts. It was more for me to understand, I'm an ENTJ, that if you're dealing with somebody who's an I, you need to dial down the E to reflect and not make that individual feel uncomfortable. It wasn't this, they're any less of a person. It's recognized that if you go in like, hey, jazz hands, I'm me, that's just going to really put them off, because that's not how they operate. And from your perspective, I think that's just such a nice way to articulate it, because the skills bit is all encompassing, and I don't care what layer you are, as in within, women of color, black women, disability, or men of color, disabled men, and so on and so forth. You've either got the skills, or you can improve the skills, or you don't. There's the next challenge is around breaking that status quo. My podcast, The Death of a Salesman, is from Arthur C. Miller play way back when, from a very, very different era. And I think even anybody knows the play, that itself raises some very interesting questions about the sales profession back then as a business. Other than yourself, are there any kind of leading voices out there that you're seeing that people should engage with and talk, and or at least listen and follow to see the conversation that's happening around this?
Yeah, so I think that's a really important distinction, is the listening part. A lot of people want to keep talking when in fact it's time to start listening. And I think one of the reasons that a lot of people don't really want to share or stop themselves from sharing is because when you share your experience, then you have to defend it. And, you are simply sharing what's happened to you, and then you get sort of victim blamed. Or people will say, oh, well, you're saying you did this, but look at, and I can't believe I'm blanking on her name, the woman who's the CEO of Spanx. She was a single mom and she's a billionaire. Like, you can do it too. It's not so simple. No one ever would say, and again, like to a white man, if he's talking about some of his struggles, when someone say, well, Bill Gates did it, why can't you? But yet, we put these kind of stereotypes onto other people all the time. So I think a lot of it is listening. And one thing that I do myself is when I start to feel that defensive feeling, or that feeling of, then that's a signal for me that I need to listen more. And I need to really explore this, because there's something going on inside. That defensiveness is what keeps us in our place of status quo, because we go, oh, no, that's not right. Or that's just you. Or that's not how it was. You're actually, that experience didn't happen to you, when in fact that experience did happen to that person. You are in a place of privilege to even have them tell you that. So the next thing is just to, like you said, listen, and who to follow. So there are some great voices. One thing that I do is I actually follow I use the follow a lot on LinkedIn. I don't connect too with a lot of these people because, again, people on LinkedIn only get 50,000 connections, I believe.
30,
I don't know.
30.
Yeah, they get 30,000. So, if you're not going to contribute to their conversation, then, you're just there to listen. You can follow and allow them to connect with, make their network. Off of the top of my head, other women that I really admire in sales, like Gabrielle Blackwell, we mentioned her name. She's someone who posts great stuff. And what I do too is I look at her posts and then I see who she's interacting with, where the interesting conversations, and then I follow follow the breadcrumbs, right? Follow the people around them. Another woman that I follow, she's a DEI educator here from Toronto, and her name is Janelle Benjamin. She posts great stuff. And again, through conversations on her page, you can follow other people. And that's generally what I recommend doing is those voices are there and they're really loud. And it's your job just to listen and listen with, and if you do need to talk, I think one thing too that I just wanted to mention is that sliding into their DMs with your questions about what they're posting is not really okay.
No.
You're demanding free labor from them. And so, if you have questions, first of all, there's Google, which is a great place to start because generally people have actually written free stuff for you to read. But if you're, read their books, read their articles, chances are if you have the question, they've answered it, especially if there's someone who this is their job. So don't, the last possible thing you should be doing is seeing someone you think is interesting, sliding into their DMs and then asking them a bunch of questions about it. Don't do that.
I mean, don't do that full stop. It's just irrespective, just don't do that full stop. And I think, the listening aspect is key. And I really like your, I'm going to reflect on that myself. When you feel that, not that I ever get necessarily defensive in terms of, the stuff that I've experienced, but just to check yourself, and also don't be a keyboard warrior. That's the other challenge with social media. Sometimes you may think that what you are writing doesn't come across in a certain way because you're hearing the tonality in your head, but in whether it's social media, whether it's email, whether it's WhatsApp, whether it's just read there in black and white, and you're like, that's not come across. Maybe you did intend it, maybe you didn't intend it, and maybe I've started to just talk to women in my life who I know and go, okay, I just want to listen to what you're experiencing. I said, my wife, sometimes she comes downstairs, huge frustrations in terms of what she's experienced. And it's not necessarily the people on the other end are trying to create that experience. It's just the nature of where we are in the world today. And the listening bit, and then reflecting on, well, what can I do to make sure that this doesn't happen? And I said, becoming the father of a daughter has, not that it wasn't, because my mother brought me up in a very certain way. So, in terms of all of this, but yeah, it's interesting. The conversation needs to be had. So I'll make sure I add Gabrielle. I know the other lady. I'll make sure that I put her. I will follow her and put her into the link for this podcast. To end with you, Devon. What can people do if people, I've talked about sliding to DMs. However, if there are people listening to this, are they welcome to connect with you and learn a little bit more about your journey, especially those in the hospitality industry that may be making that shift?
Yeah, especially other fellow people from hospitality, women in sales. Maybe to end this off on what a great power LinkedIn is, and even networking, and how much helping other people can make a difference. Please connect with me. Please check out my featured posts if you are trying to break into sales. I have made a couple posts in the past about things that you can do today for free to start your sales journey. One of those things being like Salesforce Trailhead. There's a lot of things that you can do for free starting today, that you can start building your LinkedIn profile and sort of your credentials. For, so when they say like, do you have experience with the CRM? You could be like, I'm a Salesforce Ranger. And I was a Ranger before I even worked using Salesforce because, I had some free time last year. But I think to end it off is yesterday, my LinkedIn notifications are almost zero because as you said, it's so distracting, but I get pinged when I get tagged in a post. So I get this ping and I thought, okay, I got tagged in a post. Interesting. And what happened is a woman who is I want to say I met her in Rev Genius. I had posted about the Women in Tech Sales Bootcamp that I did. And I think someone recommended to her. I sent it to her. She's like, this isn't a great fit for me, but I know another woman who this would be a good fit for. She sent it to her. And yesterday that woman started her first day as a BDR. And I had heard about that boot camp from my friend, who she had heard about it from her friend. So you can actually trace it all back to how just, sharing, encouraging your network with other opportunities. But, I never would have heard about it if I didn't start sharing my story first. If I hadn't said on LinkedIn, hey, I'm looking for tech roles. If you know something, if you know someone that I should talk to, like, please connect us. And that started this whole thing. So you never know what's going to be the end point. But when you just start, with the goal of helping people and of being helpful, then it's amazing. Like, I was just so excited that this, it's this posted BDR, like, that's it. She started a new career now. And it wasn't because of me at all, but, it was just this effect of everybody sharing and being open and helping each other. So I think that please come and connect with me. Check out my featured posts. If you are looking for, boot camps, I have a lot of information about that. And also, yeah, like, it's, you can slide into my DMs.
Right. Careful there. Mention this podcast to prove you've listened to the podcast. Yeah. Contact Devon.
That's a good one.
About sliding into your DMs, if I maybe so bold. Devon, thank you so much. I really appreciate your taking the time of day to record this and bring this conversation to life that needs to be continued. For everybody tuning in, as ever, thank you very much. If you want to be on this podcast, you know what to do. If you want to recommend anybody to be on this podcast or this vlog, you know what to do. Otherwise, Devon, thank you. And
thank you.
Mouse is frozen. Stop recording.